Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, a true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
And now let's revise this to what is actually going on in Canada.
O Canada, our home and native Gulag, Trudeau f***ed up and locked us down again. 82% of us got jabbed, but Omicron's on a spree. From far and wide, O Canada, we've lost all sanity. God keep our land, communism free. Oh, Canada, please stop spying on me. Oh, Canada, we need some liberty.
Welcome to the Beau Show. Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada. What is happening to your beloved country? I have many friends in Canada, and I constantly hear stories about how bad it is there. Stories that almost seem unreal. These stories even predated the pandemic about how bad the government was there and what a royal disaster Justin Trudeau is. But I mean, what would you expect when you elect a drama teacher to be your prime minister? So in my parody of your national anthem, it pained me to do this because look, I don't take national anthems lightly. In fact, I quite like O Canada. And musically speaking, it's a lovely song. But in the way that your government has altered your country, I felt that I needed to highlight the pains that many Canadians feel right now. Not unlike Australia. Some of the most draconian lockdowns and rules have come from Canada. I've only spent limited time in Canada, mainly on a vacation in Quebec City, which I found quite charming and lovely. So I hate to see any country go down the tubes. But I know a lot of Canadians, many are close friends, and they complain about what is happening to their country. Trudeau has been in office since 2015, but that doesn't really tell the story of his ascent in the Liberal Party. This guy has been Mr. Multicultural and helped Canada sign the Paris Climate Accord, which we all know was a supreme disaster and great for all the polluting countries, but a ripoff for all the responsible countries. We all now know about his infamous blackface controversy, which would cause, most politicians to fold up like a lawn chair. But alas, the Liberals have stood by him, just like they stood by Virginia Governor Ralph Northam when photos of him in blackface surfaced. Now look, I don't really like digging up the past to cancel someone, but for sensitive Liberal Canadians, they have to wonder about their dear multicultural leader. I also learned that in singing your national anthem, that the lyric, in all our sons command has been changed to the gender neutral in all of us command. That really threw me for a loop because I read about it on the Canadian government website. And I almost couldn't believe it. Justin Trudeau is not known for great leadership or freedom, but he is known for making O Canada gender neutral. We also know that Trudeau thinks that lockdowns are the most effective measure against COVID. Canada has seen some of the strictest lockdowns in the world outside of China, and just recently they resumed lockdowns again, in spite of the fact that the country is over 80% vaccinated. In a new Ipsos poll for Global News, only 49% of Canadians approve of Trudeau's response to the Omicron surge. The tolerance for lockdowns is much lower now too. Just 52% of Canadians support more lockdowns, as opposed to 2/3 last July. I gotta be honest, I still find this number to be baffling. 52% of Canadians want more lockdowns? You are one of the most vaccinated countries in the world. Why would you tolerate this insanity? Let's not forget that elective surgeries have been paused in Canada, and citizens are not okay with that. 88% of Canadians agree with that. And let's look at the business consequences. Arthur Salzer, CEO of Northland Wealth Management of Ontario, has been in Costa Rica for the past 2 months and has no intention of returning to Canada as long as they require vaccine passports. He also knows 30 other business owners who have left Canada just like him and may take their businesses with them. Salzer talks about how normal it is in Costa Rica without all the passports and the lockdown madness, and also notes the normalcy in a state like Florida, where I live. He says it's just like real estate. Location, location, location. Here's something else that he told the media outlet Wealth Professional. Quote, while Costa Rica has Omicron, a doctor may prescribe ivermectin plus vitamin D or zinc. The infected person will stay home and get some sunshine. Unquote. Salzer also says that, quote, you need political will to turn around the Canadian business pandemic lockdowns. We have governments of various political stripes and regions, federal, provincial, and municipal, restricting people's movements and removing a lot of individual rights and freedom. People can't operate businesses, and you're seeing a lot of businesses suffering the repercussions. They're closing permanently. There are huge job losses, especially in the service sector. The government handouts aren't sufficient to compensate for those losses, unquote. This idea that Salzer had of moving out of Canada, or what he actually calls moving the human capital of Canadian businesses, is a trend that he's seeing. And I'll tell you this, I know this all too well because I have friends in Canada who are just miserable. They're just miserable. And one of my friends is going to move his family and his business to Florida. This is the unintended consequence of poor leadership. People want to live a normal life. This is taxing on everyone, your business, your family, your mental health. And Canada and Trudeau don't care. And what's more, it's baffling that half of Canadians still support Trudeau in this insanity. Salzer reminds us that income tax was a measure of the emergency powers during World War I. And it's still here. So think about that. What's going on now may be here to stay. Let's pivot to a big part of Canada's supply chain, the truckers, who now have a vaccination requirement. This is a big deal. In fact, a group of truckers is driving across Canada to protest this federal vaccine mandate. The first leg of the convoy, dubbed the Convoy for Freedom 2022, traveled from British Columbia this last weekend and will arrive in Ottawa on January 29th. You already have major supply chain issues and a shortage of drivers, but the federal mandate could result in a loss of up to 30,000 cross-border commercial drivers, according to the Canadian Trucking Alliance. Truckers would have to quarantine when they return from the United States. American truckers who are unvaxxed will not be allowed to enter Canada. I want to play a video of a Canadian trucker who is very fed up because I think he can express his sentiments better than I could ever convey them. Take a look.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lee. I drive one of these. This is a truck I drive up and down the road every week. I've been with this company for coming on 9 years. March will be 9 years. They run from Ontario, Canada, Florida every week. Sometimes we hit California, sometimes out to Seattle, Washington. It depends what they got, where we go, but it's mainly a lot of Floridas. As of tonight, January 13th, 2023, I got back from my trip from Orlando. I had to empty out my truck. I took everything out. And it's after 11 o'clock now. I've been back here probably for 4 hours, 4.5 hours, something like that, cleaning the truck out. I've been put on unpaid leave thanks to Mr. Justin Trudeau. He came up with the mandates for the vaccine. Cross-border drivers must now be fully vaccinated to go into the U.S., and that takes effect on Saturday the 15th. His buddy, Joe Biden, he's got his mandate starting January 22nd, that truck drivers must be fully vaccinated to go back and forth across the border into the U.S. Ladies and gentlemen, look around your house, look at everything you've got. If you got it, a truck brought it. They're pulling how many of these off the road because drivers are refusing to get the vaccine? Oh, go get the vaccine. Go get the vaccine. You can keep your job. No, we live in Canada here, people. It's a choice. It's a choice. You have the right to go get it. I have the right not to. Do I spend a lot of time seeing you people, dealing with you in stores? No, my ass is running down the road in this thing, bringing all the shit that you want. Your couches, your chairs, your clothes, all your shit. Your house that you live in. One of these brought the material to your site where you're living so that the framers could build it. The bricklayers could lay the brick. It was all brought on a truck. What, you think they carried it on their back? You think they put it in their trunk and when they came to work every day? Open your fucking eyes, people, of what the fuck is going on. Governments are supposed to be there to create jobs, to help people, keep the economy going. This liberal motherfucker that we got up there, he's trying to kill every fucking job he can, put as many people out of work. He's trying to drag the economy down in the country. Look at his spending. If you spent like that in your household, would you be bankrupt? Would you be broke by now? Oh, could you say, well, I want a raise because I fucking want one?
Now, of course, we had to bleep out a lot of Lee's expletives, but you can tell he's a passionate guy. More importantly, he's right. Listen to Lee's warning about the effects of all of this.
People, the only thing I can suggest, get your ass to a store first thing in the morning, stock up. Because when them shelves go empty, you're going to be looking for more trucks to bring it. And the trucks aren't coming. Not the way they are now. Because there's this many trucks coming off the road. Government, 11, 12,000 is what they say. Do you believe the government? I don't believe the government. I drive one of the goddamn things. The numbers I'm hearing are in around 38,000 of them coming off the road. If these guys go across the border twice a week, that's 76,000 loads of freight that is not being put into the Canadian and the U.S. economy.
Look, he makes a valid point. I don't know if the numbers are perfectly accurate because he's guessing, but truly, it could wreak havoc on supply chains, all because of nonsensical vaccine mandates. Dr. Peter McCullough, one of the doctors that Joe Rogan interviewed that subsequently got yanked off of YouTube, says that because the vaccines have largely failed in stopping the transmission of COVID, especially Omicron, the vaccine mandate should be thrown away. It's amazing that American and Canadian governments not only tell you to get the vaccine, but that they mandate it. In fact, a peer-reviewed study in the Journal of the American Medical Association last month found that the vaccine effectiveness against the Delta variant was 62% in the first month and 57% by month 3. Another big point that McCullough makes is that the vaccines are still investigational. And because of that, mandates have no moral or legal standing. This makes you wonder why Trudeau is still doing this. And also, why is the focus still on a failed or ineffective vaccine and not on treatment? Here in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis installed monoclonal antibody centers all throughout the state. Why are they not doing that in Canada? Rather than putting critical truck drivers on leave, why not just give them the treatment and support that they need should they get COVID? We've got to start looking at COVID as endemic and how to treat people, not how to lock them down and kill their business. You all know how much I like the intellect of Dr. Jordan Peterson, a clinical psychologist and former professor at the University of Toronto. Here are some of his recent thoughts about this situation.
I was recently in Nashville, Tennessee. No lockdowns. No masks, no COVID regulations to speak of. People are going about their lives. Why can that be the case in Tennessee and in other U.S. states such as Florida when there are curfews in Quebec 2 years after the pandemic started with a vaccination rate of nearly 80%? When BC is still limiting social gatherings, when we are putting tremendous and unsustainable strain on all the complex systems that have served us so well and made us so comfortable in the midst of the troubles of our lives. The cure has become worse than the disease. I have recently spoken with senior advisors to provincial governments in Canada. There is no endgame in sight. The idea that Canadian policy is or should be governed by the science is not only not true, it's also not possible, as there is no simple pathway from the facts of science to the complexities of policy. We are deciding by opinion poll to live in fear and to become increasingly authoritarian in response to that fear. That's a danger too, and it's increasingly real.
Now, Peterson, of course, is a high-profile Canadian, but he compares his experience in my home state of Tennessee to what is going on in Canada. He explains it this way. Everyone is so concerned about this one risk, but there are many others that are being ignored. But life hands you risks every day. Pick your poison. He implores Canada's government to end the madness and open the country back up. I agree with Peterson, and surely half of Canadians, if not more, agree. You should not base policy on faulty science. And here's another huge problem in Canada. The rest of the world should pay attention. Newly released documents show that Canada's government spied on 33 million citizens to track their movements in the COVID pandemic. According to Blacklock's reporter, the Public Health Agency of Canada clandestinely tracked phones to surveil the public's movements during the pandemic. The PHAC bought location and movement information from telecom giant TELUS to, quote, understand possible links between the movement of populations within Canada and the spread of COVID-19, unquote. Aha, I see. All just scientific research. Canadian officials use your tax dollars to buy your location and movements. Not only were they caught, they say they plan on continuing to track movement for you Canadians for up to 5 years. My understanding is that when citizens would come back to Canada, you have to download this app called ArriveCan, and you check into it. To me, that's kind of a person volunteering to be tracked, if you don't delete it especially. But now we learn that even outside of the app, what the Public Health Agency was doing was tracking your phone without your knowledge or consent. And here in America, we thought spying after 9/11 was bad, or maybe just, something that the Obama administration did to the Trump campaign. But this is just widespread craziness. I've heard anecdotes of Canadian citizens getting phone calls from government employees if they so much as wandered out for a walk during lockdown. Well, now you can understand why. They were monitoring you the whole time. And even so, what good did it do? You spy on citizens, you force them to get vaccines, and COVID still runs rampant because that's what viruses do. What do you have to show for it? Just less privacy and less freedom. Meanwhile, other parts of the world have returned to some normalcy. But yet half of Canadians seem to be in favor of more lockdowns. I can't even fathom this. Let's look at what all the effects of what is going on are happening with the poor Canadian leadership that we see. Number one, they're renewing lockdowns that didn't work in the first place. That restricts freedom and also has the deleterious consequence of adverse mental health. Two, they create vaccine mandates for vaccines that are minimally effective and still investigative. Three, as part of those mandates, they hurt truckers, a huge component of an already ailing supply chain crisis. Four, they track their citizens' movement without their consent. And five, they kill Canadian business by essentially making it more attractive for entrepreneurs and business owners to just leave Canada, which will have a huge effect on the economy, whether that's big business or the little mom and pop shop. It's all connected, and it's asinine policy, and it's being motivated by fear and power. You need more Jordan Petersons, not more Justin Trudeaus. And where's Justin Bieber? Can't he create a song about this, or is that asking too much? If this were the 60s, as I mentioned in my previous counterculture episode, we'd be hearing all kinds of musicians singing out about this type of authoritarianism and restriction of freedom. Where are they now? Where's Neil Young? Does he love not being able to perform? I learned that in February of 2020, Young wrote an open letter to Donald Trump titled, "You are a disgrace to my country." And remember, Young just became a U.S. citizen in 2020, so he's calling America his country when he's been a Canadian until 2020. Wouldn't it be bold of old Neil if rather than putting down Alabama or former President Trump, he called out his previous leader, Justin Trudeau? Canadians may well remember that Young's song Southern Man in 1971 attacked the South, which is what prompted Lynyrd Skynyrd to write that line about Neil Young. I just find it odd that old Neil has been awfully quiet when it comes to Canada's lockdowns and mandates. That's usually what rockers sing out against, any restriction of freedom. Now, it does seem there might be some sanity in Canadian government. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has called for a pause to the vaccine mandate for truck drivers. He has recognized the supply chain disruption. Here's what he said in a recent news conference, quote, "Common sense tells us that we are at the peak of supply chain constraints across North America, around the world, huge inflation," unquote. Well, I guess it seems someone actually does have common sense in Canada. 32,000 truck drivers off the road is going to be a huge problem. Inflation is also hitting Canada hard. Something that a Canadian friend of mine reminded me of. This whole pandemic has put a spotlight on Canada's healthcare system, which, as most of you know, is a socialized system. There are not enough ICU beds per capita in Canada, contrasted to the United States, since our healthcare system is privatized. What this means is that the Canadian system can get overwhelmed very, very easily. And also that because it's socialized, anyone with a mild cough may go in and flood the system and another ICU bed. I remember Dr. Bill Frist, a former Senate Majority Leader, talking about this decades ago with respect to the UK's socialized healthcare system. He said it's great if you've got a cold, but terrible for anything more serious, which is why so many Canadians are having to delay their own surgeries. Another impact is that people might not go in for their regular screenings out of fear. So then you open up the possibility for cancer creeping up and other ailments that are treated usually on time. Rotator cuff surgery, knee replacements, etc., they're all pushed back and people have to struggle, while we here in the United States can get these elective but important surgeries. Canada is on a massive backlog. So this is where you see important differences in private versus socialized medicine. The ratio of doctors to patients is much lower in Canada because they have to treat so many more people. Canada's taxes, you guys know this, are so high because they subsidize this, and the healthy take care of the unhealthy. Canada also has an older population, which may explain the 50% desire to lock down again, even if it's illogical. So this pandemic, just like it has in the United States, has exposed major vulnerabilities in healthcare systems and bad governance. I think the vaccine mandate for truckers is so obtuse both from an economic and a moral standpoint. Workers should not be forced to get a vaccine that is proving to be minimally effective at best. Even, Canada may have to learn its lesson. With no offense intended to my friends up north, you may have to endure this time with Justin Trudeau to realize what bad leadership can do. When your prices skyrocket, your shelves are empty, your food is scarce, and your healthcare system that you pay for is at max capacity, there will be a reckoning, just like there is here in America with Joe Biden. I understand that Trudeau barely won his last election, but alas, there he is, still calling the shots. And I do feel sorry for Canadians the way I do for Australians, but at the same time, you have to be able to exercise your voice if you're unhappy. I realize that Canada is more of a democratic socialist situation. A path America, is flirted with. But I think we can see the problems and the weaknesses of such a system. Thankfully, I think many Canadians are waking up to this. And I encourage those of you who are Canadian to express your thoughts on my social channels below this video. I would love to hear from you and what you have to say about this. I'm Beau, and that's the show.